FS1 NFL analyst Eric Mangini. Eric.
They let you back in the building after that performance yesterday?
Yeah.
I had to go get a massage because that beatdown wore me out.
He's on fire out of the gate.
Yeah,
Eric.
I'm surprised you wanted me back.
Will Antonio Brown help or hurt the Raiders this season?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of both.
Yes.
And he's one of these guys that we talk about a lot, who's unbelievably talented. And there's some management issues. And you when you take chances like that, you've got to manage 6 days to get to the 7th day, to get to game day. And that's where the production and that's where the value comes in. So there's that component of it. And he's going to be incredibly productive if he plays. What's it, 6 straight years of 100-plus catches. And the things that you have to do defensively to handle him, that'll open up so many other things. Now, the problem is the other 6 days, if you're trying to create a certain culture, and this still is a new program. It's only in the 2nd year of the program. And when you look at who they drafted and the type of guys they drafted and all highly regarded and from a character perspective, when you combine these two things, it's very mixed messages. And when you preach in the locker room one thing, that's great. You can say everything you want, but the guys know you value what you pay. You value what you pay. So wherever you put your money, the players in the locker room know, okay, it's okay to be like that. That's what this organization values, and that's the danger when you mix in situations like this.
Don't players also realize if you can produce? You know, if you're not producing, you can't have the antics. So they do, and I agree with you, but I still believe that they look and they go, when you look at these eye-popping numbers that you just talked about, and this is a guy, Jerry Rice only did it 3 times. He's done it 6 times, still active. Last year, 15 touchdowns in 15 games. Nobody as a receiver has put up the numbers that he has. He's been incredible. So I think players, yes, they look at it. And the other part is I think John Gruden's star and brightness, right, fits in a little bit. He's not your typical coach. He's out there, very visible. I would say not stoic at all, camera hungry, soundbite kind of guy. So he fits in with AB, and you do know once you sign a guy like that, you're going to have to make some concessions, no?
You absolutely know that. And you go into it with your eyes wide open, and he's done this in the past. Now, the difficulty is when you work as hard as you work as a coach, and it looks like John works pretty hard, and you put together that game plan is predicated on people knowing what to do and being in the right spots, and that's everybody knowing what to do. And you're always limited by either your hardest learner or the guy that works the least, and I mean from a learning standpoint. So if he wants to shift and motion and have multiple formations and do all those things, and you don't have a guy who's putting it in the classroom, or it limits you, that can be very frustrating to especially a guy like John who does so many things, and you hear it all the time about the length of his call sheet and things along those lines. And from a cultural perspective, yeah, guys respect talent. Guys respect production, but the guys, it still is a community in the locker room. And it's hard as a coach to say, we demand this from everybody but you. Okay, and then everybody else looks around the room and says, okay, I get he's a good player, but I'm a good player too. So why don't I have that same leeway?
Yeah, Greg, you see where he's going with this, right?
I see where he's going, but I mean, he helps the Oakland Raiders. And let me just touch on this really quick. In the locker room, guys understand that it's just what takes place. There's a protocol. There's a hierarchy. Whether it's your quarterback, whether it's your star running back, whether it's your star receiver, defensive end, it doesn't matter. There's a hierarchy, and guys look to that guy and say, hey, you have the coach's endorsement. Can you do this for us? Can you do that? It's not so much that they want to be that guy or they want to act that to the extremes of that individual. They don't need to, because that individual is going to be who they are, and they're going to be who they need to be. But we're going to use this individual as leverage.
To set the tone?
Yes, to set the tone, but also to be the voice of reason. Because, as you said, the coach obviously has endorsed this, which rightfully so, because he understands the magnitude of impact that he will have when he's on the football field. And that's all this is about. The fact that Antonio Brown is not has not been able to practice, that we haven't seen him actually in training camp and producing and being a part of that offense and learning with these guys and building a rapport with Derek Carr right now during training camp. That's what this is all about. Once that happens, all of this cryotherapy, and helmet, we're not talking about that any longer.
Yeah, production can erase that, but Greg, very rarely do you meet with a player who says, I'm not as good as that other guy, so I should be treated poorly. I should be treated, not poorly, but I should be held to a totally higher standard than him because I'm not as good as him. Most players you interact with, they feel like they're as good as the next guy. So it would be an interesting dynamic if you had a whole locker room that said, okay, he can act any way that he wants to act, and I'll follow all the rules, but that doesn't always take place. Usually guys come in and say, you did it for him, why aren't you doing it for me?
That happens typically when your locker room is full of a variety of guys, both veteran and young guys. But as a young guy, you bring in young guys, they're not going to concern themselves with what Antonio Brown is doing because everything is new to me. So I don't know. I see this, but I know I can't do that.
You'll be off the team.
Well, look, I remember Asante Samuel, and I love Asante, and Asante is early in his career.
So you're ripping on him. Go ahead.
No, I'm not ripping on him. I love Asante, and I love Ty Law, okay? And Ty Law had been there and been productive and signed a $100 million contract or whatever it was, and he had certain leeways in the defense that Asante Samuel didn't have. But Asante was still in the office going, well, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
Why can't I do that? And this was early in his career, and obviously Asante went on and had an amazing career. But at that point, he was held to a different standard because he had done different things from a production standpoint. But it's still, he saw how this guy was treated, and he said, well, why can't I do that?
Eric, I want to focus on the Bill Cowher comments because these guys are glossing over it. This is a guy who has been with the Steelers forever. Mike Tomlin knows him well. We haven't heard any Steelers talk about Antonio Brown. No veiled shots.
They turned the page.
Have they? What do you make of the Cowher comments? Calling Antonio Brown disruptive, to me, I wonder, is this Mike Tomlin and the Steelers' way of speaking through Bill Cowher?
No, I think that Mike Tomlin, I respect Mike a lot, and I've always felt that Mike will say what he feels, and there's no value in the Pittsburgh Steelers continuing to have a disagreement with a player that's no longer there. Right. They said all they needed to say when they traded him for a third-round draft pick. That was about as loud a megaphone as the Pittsburgh Steelers could use, because when you got a guy like Odell Beckham who goes for 1 and then you give away Antonio Brown for 3, that's a pretty strong statement. In terms of a guy being disruptive, is anybody surprised by those comments? But you go into it, again, knowing what you're going to get. And as long as you can live organizationally and as a coaching staff with the challenges that come with those guys, then so be it. It's not for everybody. It's not really what happens in New England. You may get some guys who have been disruptive at other places, but they fall in line when they come there, and we see how that worked out.
Look,
what are you shaking your head about?
Because I'm going to tell you why.
Got him. You shut him up.
Your silence speaks volumes.
Because you mentioned New England, and I just thought.
He's shaking his head because there's a scripture in the Bible that says love covers a multitude of sins. And so when I look at this Antonio Brown situation, his production covers a multitude of whatever we want to call it. Foolishness, antics, baggage. It covers that up when you continue to produce the way that he's produced over his career as consistently as he's been able to produce over his career. And again, it's not just about the numbers, why he's going to help this Oakland Raiders team become a better team. It's what you mentioned even earlier. Defenses have to now schematically approach the game differently. He's going to open it up for other guys alongside of him.
Carr, right?
Derek Carr is going to be better of it. Derek Carr had 19 touchdowns last year. 19 touchdowns, 10 of which were to tight ends. That means 9 were to his receivers. His leading receiver was Jordy Nelson, who's no longer in the National Football League and wasn't even close to being a shell of himself that we saw with the Green Bay Packers. So now you add on an Antonio Brown and you're willing to tell me that he's going to hurt this team? He's not going to help them? That's just, it doesn't even make sense.
But too much is made, though. Too much. I think, especially when you don't have games, and he has, since he left Pittsburgh, and all the other noise outside. I agree, once he starts to play and he's back on the field, it's going to be about football. And we'll remember how good he is, and we'll see all the numbers, all the touchdowns, everything he's done. I think so much is made because you don't have that stuff to be able to draw from now, so it's all the other noise. The helmet thing became some big deal because a guy wants to hold on to his helmet that he's worn for 10 years in the National Football League.
It became a big deal because he left practice. That's why it became a big deal. Yeah, he can hold on to his helmet.
It's supposed to be enough practice because of his feet.
You have lawyers. Your lawyer can go handle that. You can do all the things that he did in relationship to the league while still being at practice, while still being at meetings. The big deal wasn't about, okay, it's his helmet. It's about that he wasn't in the building.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.